Hi and welcome to my channel. Jenny here with Frizz Drip. I will be making a lavender flowers soap today, and I will also be making my first large batch. So when I say large batch, I mean this is about 60 sorry, this is 33 pounds of soap, 23 pounds of oils. So this is going to be 33, I believe, pounds of soap batch. So this is the largest batch I have ever done. It is just about twice my previous large batch. Okay, so these are my oils. I am using really big buckets, right? I've never used these big buckets before. And I'm still going to be using my same old stick blender. I do have a bigger industrial stick blender, but I want to start out with my first large batch using this. And then if given how this works for me, I'll decide on what to do next time. So my liquid state oils with additives, my hard state oils that have been melted, and then this is my lye solution. This is my lye solution is more than 3 quarts. This is 3 quarts, but I do have the other extra bit on the side, so everything is going to be going in. I'm talking about my oils. I have olive oil, castor oil, and grapeseed oil in here. My additives are colloidal oats and kaolin clay. That's what makes this beauty creamy. In here I do have babasu, coconut, and shea butter. Lye solution, I have silk, lye, water, sugar, and sodium lactate. This is my fragrance. This is the lavender flowers fragrance, and I will be using 2 colorants with, well, technically 3. So this is my grape ape from Mad Micas. This is a pigment, so I like to use some oil to pre-mix it and really smash it, because pigments will speckle if you do not pre-mix and really like get it going and grinding. And then this is iridescent violet by Workshop Heritage, and this is my titanium dioxide that has been pre-mixed. Okay, I will be adding some lavender buds. You know, whenever I make lavender soap of any kind, I add my lavender buds. I usually don't add too much botanicals and toppers on my soaps, but they're the few that I do add, and lavender is one of them. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking. I hope I don't get too clumsy, because this is just a lot of oils that I'm gonna be working with for the first time. It was bound to happen, and today's the day. I'm super excited for this milestone. So keep watching with me, and let's see how clumsy I get. I really did struggle with my first large batch, and I don't know how much of it is obvious in this video, just because of editing and speeding things up and whatnot. But yeah, I did struggle. It was more than twice what I have made, or more than twice my previous large batch, which to many people it's not that large, but my previous large batch were 30 bars. You've seen me use that mold from Workshop Heritage many times. So I am scaling up some of my most popular products, and so this mold gives me 70 bars of soap, and so the previous one gave me 30 bars. So this is a little more than twice the capacity of my previous mold. And also, you really can't tell honestly from my video angle, but the bucket is also much bigger. So yeah, I am working with bigger instruments, so like the buckets and whatnot, and more oils. And lifting was also a little bit of a struggle, but it worked out. And I think I did really good for my first. In the future, I'm going to continue this way for now, but I'm going to try to see how I can make things a little bit more manageable. I've seen people who, make bigger batches use this low, I don't know what to call it, low, wide, stainless steel, like bowls like you see in prep kitchens. I actually do have a couple of them. I got them in preparation for large batches, but for some reason I just like these bowls, or bowl slash buckets at this point. They're more like buckets. And we'll see. I do plan to use it in the future. I just, when you start something new, you want to like try out a few things and see what works for you. So I'm trying it out this way for now. I'm gonna see what works for me, and then I can decide to see what I'm gonna adjust. So watch me go through this journey of scaling up. And for me, this is a lot. So, it is what it is at this point. So, yeah. One thing I want to talk about are my micas, because in the past I've had someone talk about, it would be nice for you to talk about the colors you use, where you get them, your fragrance, and all that stuff, which is good. So I'm going to talk about my micas. So I do get my micas from micas slash colorants, because I don't only use micas. I also use pigments. I use charcoal. I use clays. Yeah. So I do get them from Mad Micas. Mad Micas is like one of my biggest suppliers that I do get micas from. They make fantastic micas. I have workshop heritage micas, and I do have them because I used to buy them, and I kind of have a good collection of them. I don't know when I was, creating or collecting micas to like bulk up my collection, so I have a variety. Workshop Heritage was one I was going to, because I do have their molds and their loaf cutters and their lug splitters and whatnot, and I love their stuff. They do make really good quality stuff. And then I started getting their micas, and they have beautiful micas. I've never not loved the micas. I've gotten only because I've made sure to source correctly. So that's one thing you need to make sure you're doing. You will need to make sure that you are sourcing correctly. So I would never buy my micas from Amazon. So when I say from Amazon, because some of these companies also sell on Amazon, I would not get like generic made in China, like random brand, because it's cheap or it's cheaper. I do not advise just home soapers who are just hobbyists to do that, because honestly, I always say start with, even if you're just starting off, make sure you're using something that has some quality to it. Make sure you're using something that has been tried and tested, not just the cheapest, because sometimes some of these things you can get like a 1 gram bag, and a 1 gram bag can like $3. Like seriously, that is a really good starting point to even see what colors you're gonna like, and how it's gonna work based on the type of fragrance you're using, because some fragrance would morph your colors or discolor it or something of that nature. And if you're not really investing because you're doing a business, or because you are making a lot of soap for like gifting, it's just going to be a waste, and you're going to be investing in low quality, made in China. I'm going to use the word crap, because a lot of the time they don't work out, and then your recipe is getting all messed up because you did not source quality stuff, and then you're not sure what went wrong, and then you're on those platforms on Facebook asking all the questions, like this was my first batch and it turned brown, or it just started sipping oil or something. It's always something. And, a lot of people will start giving you opinions like, share your recipe. Let's see exactly what you did. What type of micas did you, what type of fragrance did you use? Where did you source them from? That could be the problem. That could be the problem. I always advise, like, I don't care if you're a hobbyist or if you're trying to like make a multi-million-dollar company or you're trying to cut costs because of that. Go for good quality stuff. Once you start with good quality stuff, quality does not mean expensive. Like, quality and expensive, there is, there's that. I don't know. It's just quality does not always mean expensive. So there are really good, affordable quality colorants out there. So beware of the colorant you're using. Also beware that some colorants, even from reputable suppliers, not all colorants are soap stable. Some people will use the word soap safe, and that's usually because, you put it in the soap and it just loses its color because it's not soap stable. So you also want to check for that. Like, is this soap made for cold process soap making or soap making in general? Honestly, it doesn't really matter the process. So is this colorant made for soap making? And then you also need to like understand that depending on the type of soap making you're going to be doing, your color could come out looking different. So, for example, if you're doing melt and pour and you're doing hot process soap making, the way the color would be in melt and pour will not always be the way it's gonna look in hot process. Now, this is because of these are two different types of soap making. So the hot and cold process soap making go through saponification and all that chemical chain reactions and all that all that scientific thing that go on over a period of weeks. Melt and pour is a soap base, and a soap base is already created or curated soap that has been made in whatever way. It could be made with detergents, or some people these days are trying to make it a little bit more detergent free. Honestly, I cannot really speak for melt and pour. That's not my expertise. I don't really work that much with melt and pour. I do, depending on my project, but I don't really, really go in depth into melt and pour. So I'm not the best person to talk about melt and pour, but on a surface level, on a general basis, I can just tell you about melt and pour, and you would see that the colorant will look different. Some soap suppliers will even try to show you the difference on their website when you're trying to buy the colorant, like what it would look in melt and pour versus in cold process. The way it looks in cold process usually is going to be the way it will look in hot process. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And also your fragrance. The fragrance you're using may disturb the how your color comes through. So some fragrances are discoloring. Some fragrances could morph your color, and that is, I don't think I've ever experienced color morphing. I've seen a lot of soap makers make soap on YouTube, and I've seen them use fragrances that morph their colors. Basically what that means is the color of your soap completely changes to some weird color that's like, how in the heck could a blue colorant look red, for example? And I know natural colorants also have that, a lot of the times have those characteristics. When I say natural colorant, I mean like when you diffuse colors from plants, they have a lot of those characteristics and the likelihood to morph. So you need to really know the type of color it's going to end up being. so that you can determine if that's actually the color you want. I am not an expert, again, in natural colorant when it comes to, when I say natural colorant, I'm not meaning like clays and all of that. I mean like when you are like diffusing, not diffusing, when you are infusing like turmeric, or what are those, there's so many of these plants and seeds, and they're really fantastic soapers who have gotten that chemistry down to the T, and they really know what the colors end up being. So you need to know what the color ends up being, because what it looks after it's been infused is not what it might look like once it's mixed in and the light hits that color, and then it changes to something else. So there's so much to consider. But if you're just starting out, we're not going too crazy. You pick out your colors, you look at the fragrances you're looking to start working with, read comments. Honestly, comments are your friend. Read comment, because comments also differ from person to person. Just get the general gist. Get the general gist, and then you'll be good. Understand how people have worked with it, what they've said about it, understand what the supplier is trying to tell you that the fragrance, that the colorants, the fragrance could do, because that would also help you with your colorant. So I'll always say, start easy, start with something simple. Don't go for fragrances that do weird things. For a beginner soaper, I would say stay clear of floral fragrances, because they do have that characteristics. They can move fast. Now this has to do with trace, not even colors right now. But read reviews, get in small quantities, get those tester sample sizes, do small batches. So if you make waste, you're not making that much waste. And if you make waste, try to research and see, how can I turn my light heavy soap into laundry soap, for example. In soap making, I promise you, there is minimal waste in soap, if you know what you're doing. And you could research. There is so much knowledge out there. Somebody has done something. When it comes to the type of soap making you're interested in trying out. So again, like I said, if you turn out to have a light heavy soap, that's not trash. You could rebatch it into laundry soap. I usually would not advise to rebatch it back into body soap, because at that point, the truth about it, I don't care what anybody says, the truth about it is you don't know where you screwed up. Your lye, you put in too much lye. At that point, you don't know what less oil you used, because all oils have their sap value. That is the value at which they saponify. Every oil has a sap value. So you cannot just say, oh, my soap is lye heavy, I'm gonna hot process it and rebatch it and add water and some olive oil or some. It honestly, it doesn't work that way. Some people say, yeah, just rebatch it and add what's missing. How do you know what's missing? Like, how do you know? How do you know what's missing? You say you have this formula that you followed, and the formula, maybe it tells you that everything is good, but then you turned out to have a lye heavy soap. Like, just rebatch it and use it for dish soap or laundry soap, and you'll be good. So going back to the colorants, buy in small batches, and this is a very beautiful hobby. Yeah, well, this soap turned out extremely pretty. Thanks for watching, and see you in my next video.